So, good evening, everybody. Hello, sorry to interrupt. I know you're chatting, catching up, or whatever, but we're here to welcome you very warmly to our conversation with the leaders of Merton Council. I'll introduce them to you in just a moment, but I'll probably better begin by telling you who I am because I'll be less familiar to you, I suspect. I'm Peter Mayhew Smith, and I'm the group principal for South Thames Colleges Group. So we have colleges in Kingston, Wandsworth, Sutton, and of course we've got one here in lovely Merton Borough, just down the way near the mosque. So really proud to be part of the Merton community, and even prouder to be asked to help out this evening and provide the chair role on the stool for you all this evening, and to help this evening go as wonderfully well as I possibly can. So I'm going to just talk you through how we're going to do things this evening, and then I'm going to pass over to our lovely panel. We obviously are concerned about your health and safety, so we have fire exits provided for you. You can see the three illuminated signs there that will tell you how to leave the building quickly if there is a fire alarm. The event is being live streamed and recorded, and photography is also taking place in the room. Now, we've had a lot of questions submitted, so thank you, Merton. Very active engagement with the event, and thank you very much to those of you who are here this evening to present your questions in person. We haven't been able to schedule all of the questions, but we'll get through as many as we possibly can tonight. Some of the questions we had, I'm told, can't be addressed in this forum because they are personal or identify information about other people, or that they are already part of the council's casework. But please rest assured, everybody, the council will get back to everyone concerned who has submitted a question and do their very best to answer and support you with the points that you've wanted to raise. Now, we've got a pretty strict format to help us answer as many questions as we can. I'll introduce the question for you, and some have requested that I ask the question on your behalf. But those of you who want to ask your question directly, we'll ask you to turn on the microphone in front of you. Can everybody see the microphone? And there's a button there. It's the little silver button nearest to you at the bottom of the panel that you would need to press, and that will immediately send you live. For time reasons, we're going to just limit the opportunity to ask one follow-up question. Firstly, we'll check with the question asker if they want to ask that follow-up, and if they don't, we'll then throw it open to the rest of the audience to come in with anything they'd like to say. We'll ask you to raise your hands, and I'll invite one person to ask that follow-up question. We've got about 7 minutes per question, so please do try to fit within that time frame. I know that may not be the easiest thing in the world because there's plenty to say, I'm sure, but we will do our best. We want to get round everybody, so please try to stay within our 7-minute time limit. As I say, the session is being live streamed and recorded, and we would advise everybody not to share personal or sensitive information that you wouldn't want to make public. So please be mindful of the fact that you're in a much wider forum than we appear to be in the council chamber here this evening. And also, it goes without saying, please do be respectful and considerate to everyone present and everybody watching online. We won't put up with disruptive, disrespectful, or discriminatory behaviour, and obviously we'll have to close questions or responses that aren't acceptable by those standards. So time is limited. To keep things moving, I may step in to guide the conversation to make sure that leader and deputy leader can answer as many questions as possible. We'll close the questions at about 8:30, and then for everyone in the room, there will be about 30 minutes to network and chat. So a long introduction, I'm sorry about that, but plenty of ground rules to set out, and I hope they're all really helpful and will keep the evening as purposeful and focused as we can. But I'm very pleased to introduce to you, I probably don't need to introduce our panel to you this evening. We're very lucky to have the two leaders of the council, Councillor Ross Garrett and Councillor Eleanor Stringer, who's the deputy leader. And I'm really pleased to welcome them this evening and pass over to Ross for your opening comments. Ross, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for what you do as part of our local community, as well as other communities as well, in providing that vitally important secondary education for many of our residents. And I'd like to start off by thanking all of you for giving up your time this evening. This is the third Meet the Leader event. The very first one was in Mitcham. The second one was in Wimbledon, and I think it's fitting that the last one of the council term is here in Morden, in the Civic Centre. It's really important to us that we are accessible, that we are listening to residents' concerns. Councils are big organisations. They don't always get things right, but we'd like to see where we can make things better for residents. And also, I think it's a useful forum for us to explain why certain things happen. So we may not agree on everything, but I think it's a helpful forum in terms of explaining the positions and a really constructive way for us to engage on issues that matter to you. As Peter said, I'm Councillor Ross Garrett. I'm leader of the council. I've had the privilege of being leader since May 2022. I love this borough. I grew up in this borough. So I grew up in Mitcham, went to primary school at Benedict Primary School, went to the Priory when it was a middle school, and went to Rutledge High School. Ellie also is a local person who grew up in Wimbledon and represents the ward where she currently lives. And over these 4 years, we have been working really hard on Merton. We are ambitious for its future. We think it's a fantastic place to live, whether it's its green spaces, its good or better schools, 100% good or better schools. Only a handful of councils have that in the country, or the facilities that we have here, whether it's our 3 fantastic leisure centres, our brilliant libraries that are also providing exercise, physical activity, as well as loaning books and digital skills for residents. But as I said, we're very ambitious for this council. And when we became deputy leader in May 22, we set it under 3 themes. Restoring civic pride, and as part of that, particularly present for Morden, is around Morden town centre regeneration, as well as making sure that the town centres work for residents, that they're clean, that they're attractive, that they get the attention that they need. And recently we announced that we were going to be doing deep cleans in our town centres, shopping parades, that we would be doing some planting in our town centres and shopping parades. And there's a great example just in front of Lidl and Iceland, just down the road there. So if you get a chance this evening, do pop along there to see fantastic planting there. We also talked about sustainable futures, and that was about building the first council homes in a generation. And the 3 sites that we have are Raleigh Gardens, Elm Nursery, Car Park, and of course Farm Road. And work is starting on those 3 sites to deliver 75 affordable homes for residents. And it is the first time that this council has built and will start owning council homes once again. And we also had the ambition around becoming London's borough of sport. So I hope you're all familiar with the fantastic low cost and free activities that we put on. There aren't too many people here that look over 65, but we do free swimming for over 65s. We do free swimming for under 16s. We have helped fund Park Run, Park Play, our parks as well. To make sure that our residents get every opportunity to stay fit and healthy. A lot of those activities take place in our fantastic parks, 10 of which have the prestigious green flags, and that's thanks to our Friends of Parks groups, our contractors, as well as council staff as well. But the main issue that residents have said to us from 2022 onwards was around the cost of living, and I'm proud of the work that we have been doing around the cost of living crisis, whether that's our council tax support, which is one of the most generous in the country, our cost of living advice days, where 6,000 residents have taken the opportunity to visit the different advice days right across the borough to understand how they can save money on their electricity bills, how they could maximise their income, and much, much more. And there is so much more to talk about, whether it's becoming an accredited London Living Wage employer, which means that all of our contractors are under the obligation to pay the London Living Wage, or whether it's encouraging businesses through our London Living Wage business grant to become accredited, because we think it's really important that people pay a fair day's pay for a fair day's work as a council. And I know that trust in politics might be at quite a low ebb at the moment. And that's why last year I was very clear around naming 4 pledges as a council to try and restore some of that connection and that trust with the residents, building on what you told us was important to you. And those 4 pledges was to create a safer streets team of officers to patrol our neighbourhoods, to tackle antisocial behaviour directly employed by the council, working with our police to make people feel safe. We are one of the safest boroughs in London, but we know that antisocial behaviour is a concern for residents. So these wardens have been employed. We said we would do this within a year. They have been employed. They are patrolling our streets. They've held coffee mornings at Long Thornton Ward, Pollard's Hill Ward and Cannon Hill Ward. And that's because residents in the resident survey in those wards had particular issues around crime and antisocial behaviour. These wardens aren't limited to those wards, and you'll see them walking around, and they've done a fantastic job since they have started. We said we would plant 1,000 trees. We've currently planted in our street trees, in those tree pits, in the lowest canopy areas, so where tree coverage isn't that high. And already we've planted 700 of those 1,000. And not just are we going to plant 1,000, we're going to plant 1,038 trees by April. We're on track for that. We would say that we'd more than double the number of bike hangers in our borough. So there's the big bike storage units that you'll see on our roads for people that live in shared accommodation or flats, don't have the opportunity to store their bikes where they live. They don't have a back garden, they don't have a shed, and it's really important if we want to encourage active travel, if we want people to have the opportunity of owning a bike, that we provide those facilities. We're 3 short of that target, but by the 13th of March, we hope to install those 3. So we would be more than on track for that target. And the last pledge, which embarrassingly, so it's safer trees, cycle hanger, pop-up tips. And they're probably the most popular of the 4 pledges. Already over 10,000 people have used our pop-up tips. We said we would deliver them 4 times a year in every neighbourhood across the borough. This is where we take over locations in people's neighbourhoods, where we have our contractor Veolia parked up with vans to take unwanted furniture, small electrical goods or recycling. And by the end of this financial year, we would have achieved that pledge as well. So by the 1st of April, that would have happened. And the fantastic thing about those pop-up tips is that it's got a 40% recycling rate as well. So not only are we doing what we can to prevent fly tipping on our high streets, on our streets, by encouraging people to use these pop-up tips. You drop by, you don't need an appointment like you do for Garth Road, but it's also having benefits in terms of recycling as well. So those 4 pledges we made a year ago, we're on track to deliver. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussion this evening. We're here to learn, we're here to listen, we're here to be constructive, but most importantly, we're here to help and support you, our residents. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Ross, for warming us up so beautifully. I think that we're all ready to go, and I'm going to turn, without further ado, to our first question from Mike Sheridan, and I believe that Mike has asked for this question to be read out by me. I hope I'm correct in doing that. But I'm going to read the question and then pass over to the panel to provide an answer to you, Mike. So here we go. First question. What is the council tax support scheme? Who benefits from it? And how is that independently measured to both audit the expenditure and how successful it is in its purpose? The Conservative councillors claim that over the last 13 years, £230 million has been poorly spent.
Thank you, Peter. I'll take that one. And I guess it depends on how you define poorly spent. So for those of you that don't know, Council Tax Support Scheme is a scheme open to residents on low income to get that financial support to help pay their council tax bills. Now, 12, 15 years ago, this was provided by central government. The government at the time, the Conservative Liberal Democrats, decided to cut that council tax support and said for councils to decide whether they were going to keep it, whether they were going to fund it themselves. And we decided we were going to keep it. We thought it was the right thing to do to help those on low income that are struggling. As I said, you know, one of the #1 issues for residents at the moment is the cost of living crisis. And this council tax support scheme helps those that are at the most financial risk. So we have decided to fund that. And as I said in my opening remarks, it is one of the most generous. And I think that is right because residents are struggling. And the council tax support currently helps around 10,000 people in the borough. We're a borough of about 215,000 residents, and the council tax support helps those. And it's part of our overall package on the cost of living crisis here in Merton. And I don't think that's poorly spent, helping residents, helping our neighbours, helping the community to be able to afford to pay their council tax, to be able to afford that they can pay for food and other things that they need to get by. I think it's absolutely right. And I think, you know, how we treat our neighbours is how we really should be judged. And what I would say, you know, this year, because we've managed our finances well as a local authority, we sold a globally renowned company for £186 million, unheard of for a local authority to do that. We built it up with no capital investment. It was returning an annual revenue figure to the council to help with our services, but we sold it. And the first thing we did with that capital was pay down the debt of this council. So we now have one of the lowest debts of a council in London, the third lowest, which means we're not using council taxpayers' money to pay off interest on debt. Neighbouring Kingston paying about £16 million a year alone in interest. We're paying £2 million on the debt that we have. So that means more money for doing the things that I talked about earlier, the things that residents say matters to them and that we can tackle it. And a knock-on effect, because we've been good with the money, is that we've been able to freeze the main element of council tax this year. We're not going for the full whack in terms of the increase for council tax, because we recognise it's not just those on the lowest income that are finding it difficult, and we need to help those when we can. So I would really like to understand from the Conservatives how they say that it's poorly spent. I think it's money well invested, creating that resilient community and making sure that we all have that opportunity to thrive.
Thank you. I learned a lot there. I hope everybody else did in the room. Thank you very much, Ross, for giving us that answer. Now, I don't know if Mike's here. I'm sorry, I don't know the names of everybody in the room. But if Mike is here, I'd like to just offer you the opportunity to put a follow-up question to Ross, if you wish to, but I'm getting a head shake from over there, which advises me that Mike's not here. Would anybody else like to ask a follow-up? Just briefly, we've got a minute left to make any further points that might be of benefit on this particular one. No? Okay, I think we've got a time gain there, everybody. So thank you very much. Great question, Mike, actually. I think that's certainly given us a lot more insight, certainly than I had anyway. So thank you, Ross. I've got question 2, and this is going to be asked by James Crasto, who I believe is here in the room. Hi, James. Thank you very much for coming. And if you find the little silver button closest to you on that panel, press that. Yes, I think we're there. Go for it, Go for it, James.
Right. What seems pretty comes with a high pollution penalty, harming air, water, and consequently our health. Very good evening, everyone. My name is James, and I'm here on my personal capacity regarding a very important environmental issue we are facing in the UK today. Of course, fireworks, all the glitz, the glamour, the thrills come with a cost. Okay. As I don't know, but maybe most of you all are aware that fireworks contain a lot of pollutants. I have listed a few here, but I don't think I want to read all that and waste your time, but you all can Google. If you don't want to take my word for it, you all can find out for yourselves. You know, the co-mixture, gunpowder, the oxidizers, potassium nitrate, you know, all the color producing chemicals, the strontium, barium, copper compounds, magnesium, aluminum, you know, just a few. I really would suggest you all have a deep thought on these compounds and chemicals. Okay. Related to my question, don't get me wrong. I'm part of the Merton Council and I'm very happy with what they're doing so far, at least. But there's one question always puzzles me. You know, for the many councils in the UK who seem to be trying hard on one hand by coming up with multiple schemes to improve air quality and, in their own words, make the climate more resilient for future generations, right? I'm a bit puzzled by the fact that such grand polluting events are advertised and held with great pomp, and not to mention charged for it, charged to watch the environment being polluted. Is it absolutely necessary for us to add to the pollution? So therefore, my query, what are your opinions with respect to pollutants and sources for pollutants in the air we breathe?
Great question. Thank you so much, James. I'm going to pass it. I think it's Eleanor volunteering for this one.
I will take this one because, yeah, so I'm Councillor Eleanor Stringer. I'm the Deputy Leader, and part of my Cabinet portfolio includes everything we do around climate change and including parks and so on. And air pollution is also something that I personally am very, very passionate about. I live near a main road. I live near Merton High Street and the Haydens Road. I don't drive myself. I cycle and walk. I have a daughter who has to walk along the main road to school, and I want, for her sake and for everyone's sake, for us to be doing everything we can to tackle pollution. But we do need to look at what the main sources of air pollution are. So there's kind of two main types. You get the kind of gas pollution like nitrogen dioxide, largely linked to cars and road traffic and lorries in particular, but you also get particulate air pollution as well. So this you get even from electric vehicles, from tyres, but also not just from transport. One of the other main sources is construction activity, actually. It's new building works going on. We want more building, we need more homes for the residents in Merton who need them, but we need to make sure that's being done in a way which doesn't impact the local air quality. So we take our air quality commitments very seriously because of the long-term health impacts of poor air quality being very, very, very well documented. So on So we look at those big sources and we see what we can do. So like I say, one of those biggest sources is construction. So we're delivering the first low emission zone for construction. And we did this in Merton. Our air quality team here led on it. And that model is now being rolled out with GLA and London councils across London. So this is benefiting us here, but it's also making a difference right across London, the kind of leading work that we're doing on how construction can be more energy efficient. And then transport is the other main contributor to pollution. And when the Mayor of London introduced the ultra low emission zone coming out to our borough, we agreed that we wanted to reduce pollution, but we knew that it was a cost of living crisis and that people would struggle. So we introduced a scrappage scheme to make it easier for people to get access to £1,000 for their vehicle to upgrade to a vehicle which would have lower emissions. And the really good news is we've seen a positive impact from that. So across the 62 monitoring locations we have, all but 3 have shown significant improvements across air quality since those moves. So they are the actions that we're taking on the main sources of air pollution. There's still more to do, and I still want to do more. Your specific question was about fireworks. That I didn't have that in a rough answer, or else I've got some of the specific stats on the fireworks with me, but happy to follow up with you on that. But like I say, if you look at the stats, that's not one of the main contributors. And we think it's much more efficient to have large, well-organised fireworks events that, yes, we charge for, but we charge a low price for, and they sell out regularly, where tens of thousands of people can see one display. We think that's much more efficient and safe rather than having lots of individual people holding their own fireworks parties, which is also much more disruptive for pets and the local community. We also removed bonfires from our fireworks display some years ago for exactly this reason. We wanted to improve air quality, and we've done everything we can to make our fireworks displays as energy efficient and environmentally friendly as possible. And we're including things like putting more drone displays and things like that. So I don't think that the benefits of cancelling fireworks is worth the risk of more people actually having their own fireworks displays and actually inadvertently increasing pollution. But I'm very happy to follow up with you separately on that. Thank you, James.
Eleanor, thank you very much indeed. And I can sense that James got a follow-up here for you.
I'm not convinced that because you'll have, no, you're right about the intentions. It's like you'll hold these big events so that individuals may reduce their fireworks, but I'm not convinced that is the case. I'm so sorry to say. It is there for everybody to see. Whoever wants to celebrate individually, they do it anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. I'm so sorry to say, but anyway, that's my opinion and my observation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James. That's a fascinating point, and I think we've all learned something else this evening about the pollutant nature of fireworks. So thank you very much for putting that out for us all to consider this evening. I think it's time to move on to question 3, though, if I may. And I'm going to introduce us all to Thorsten. Thorsten Klein, I think, is here to ask their question. And I pass you over, Thorsten. There you go.
Hi, yeah, my name is Thorsten.
Yes. Hi.
I've lived in Morden for 15 years now, right? And I remember the first time I came out of the underground station. If I come out of the underground station now, virtually no difference. Virtually no difference, despite the council talking about regenerating more the city centre for all the 15 years almost, right? So that's why I'm asking, and actually try to find out information about what's actually going on. Is actually anything going to happen? I mean, the council still repeats this mantra: we're going to redevelop. Still, nothing's happening, right? So I try to figure out what's actually going to happen. Is actually a plan about anything? There's not much available. That's my question. What it's about is there actually a bigger plan of what are we going to do with Morden Town Centre? Is there something really drastic from going from the sake of we pedestrianize the whole lot and we're going to do really big changes there, or are we effectively just going to go somewhere on the completely opposite end, the same old, just a little bit here and a little bit there, and so on. So that is that question. And so then if we go all in pretty much and really do this drastic stuff, where would the buses go? I mean, it makes sense to have them close to the underground station, but if you want to move them, there would be no space for them in the first place, right? It's just a tangent. And then just on another aspect of it was, is it looks like the plan is also to increase the sizes of the houses, the height of the houses in the center, to have new accommodation there for people, which is fair enough. Now, there my question is pretty much, what is the percentage of affordable housing that will be provided as part of this development? And we've seen this happening in London and everywhere as well, is that once the developers get the contract, it doesn't take long for them to bow out of that commitment. So how are you going to make sure that that's not going to happen? That's my question. Actually, just a couple of questions, sorry.
Thank you, Thorsten. Great question. And I think it's Ross's turn for that one.
Thank you very much, Thorsten. It is one of the most talked about topics, and I completely understand the sentiment behind the question. And at the very first in conversation with these leaders events, it was in Mitcham, and I recognise that trust between residents of Morden and the borough had been broken with the council over the regeneration of Morden Town Centre. There had been talk of it happening, and it hasn't happened, and that was for various reasons, and we can unpack some of those, but it didn't happen. So I said at that meeting, I was very keen that I wasn't going to say what the plan was around Morden until something concrete, excuse the pun, concrete was firmed up, because I didn't want to break that trust again with residents. I said at that meeting, it is a priority for this administration, and so long as I'm leader, I will be driving the regeneration of Morden Town Centre, because it's a fantastic opportunity. It's a well-connected, people, you live in Morden, you don't need me to tell you this. It's fantastically well-connected town centre. It's got the night tube. It's got great parks right on the doorstep. It's got a gym and swimming baths just down the road there. There's so much potential and opportunity here in Morden Town Centre. I see it, I recognise it, and I also see that trust had been broken. So since that very first meeting, work has been underway, and we're now at the furthest part in the process the council has ever got to in terms of Morden regeneration. Now, what we've done is, you laugh, but it's true. It's true. We've put aside £30 million, and that's come from the selling of that global company for £186 million. So that £30 million is really important for the regeneration. We've had soft market testing with developers. We need to get a sense of what that market is. We can't develop Morden Town Centre alone. We can't do it in the council. We're just about to build those council homes. We can't set on regeneration of a crucial town centre here. So we've engaged with the market. We've got their feedback, and in a previous cabinet meeting, there was some detail about what those developers have said to us. And in the next couple of months, we'll be going out with an invitation to tender, and that's the start of the procurement process. And that is the furthest this council has ever got in terms of Morden Regen. Now, what that does, that invitation to tender, will mean that developers will come forward, give their ideas around what the town centre could be, their plans for that town centre, their ideas. What would you need in the town centre? What would be feasible in terms of the number of homes? What could it accommodate? And that's using the council land. So there's parcels of council land that we own. And this is the biggest challenge. So, you know, I come from Mitcham. I grew up in Mitcham. I love Mitcham. And residents say to me, you're spending or you're earmarking this money for Morden Town Centre and you're not doing it in Mitcham. Why is that? And the reason why we can do it in Morden and not Mitcham is because we own a significant portion of Morden Town Centre. We don't in Mitcham. Most of it is privately owned. So we've got buy-in here from the council, from leadership, from officers. We've got buy-in from the residents here, and we will drive forward with this regeneration. So going to that market and securing that development partner is important, because that's the start then of that engagement with residents, and we will expect them to lead that engagement alongside the council as partners to get even more information about what residents want, because this isn't going to be a short-term project. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be tomorrow, suddenly Morden Regen has happened. For people in the audience that know about regeneration projects, you can go to Elephant Park. You know, they signed their deal with the development partner there, and it took 15 years for it to get to the stage now. And there's fantastic park space there. There's restaurants, eateries, and housing as well. It will be a housing-led development here. In our local plan, it says the affordable element needs to be between 35% and 20% affordable housing, and developers will want to make sure that it works for them as well, because this regeneration isn't just going to cost £50 million. We're going to expect the developer to put money into it as well, and they're going to need to make it worthwhile. And we need the developer to put money into it because we want to be careful with taxpayers' money here. So in terms of what that looks like, we've had a number of workshops over the past 3 years with residents about what they want to see. This is a town centre where we want people to stay. We don't want them just to get off the bus to go onto the tube into central London, to come here, get on the bus and go into Sutton, Surrey. This is a key gateway, and we need options here that will keep residents here, whether it's cultural opportunities, whether it's nice eateries, whether it's gyms or other activities. We need that to work for residents and to bring people in. And, you know, residents say to us, they want housing in the town centre. We've got people that are living longer with their parents, for a bit further away in Morden, and they want housing where their children can go to, where residents can buy, where residents can rent as well. So this will all feed into it. But what we want to do is make it as accessible for residents, whether that's pedestrians. And yes, the bane of my life is that bus stand as well, because as soon as you come out of Morden Tube Station, all you see is a sea of buses. You don't see the potential that Morden has. You know, the National Trust is a hidden gem, is a hidden park that you can't see from the tube station. How do we draw that into the town centre or make it alive for visitors and tourists here? So that's a bit about Regen, and I may have missed some of your points, so please do come back on some of that. But we are getting there, and I want to be clear that these are firm steps that we are taking, and having that development partner will then secure the investment, will then finalise the plans with residents' engagement, and then we'll start seeing the development happening here right in the heart of Morden Town Centre.
Thank you, Ross. And Thorsten, I can see you listening along very carefully there. Would you like to come back and make a response to any of that?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for answering the question. You forgot one. So, so anyway, so let me just recap, just to make sure I understood this right. So you're saying you actually currently don't have a plan. You're working on a plan. That's what you were saying, right? So that is fair enough. So I answered that question, and the other one was the bus thing, but that was just on the side. Anyway, with affordable housing, so you're saying 25 to 30% is your target. And the question you didn't answer is, what's going to happen? Developers do what they always do. They say, yes, cool, I get the contract now. You're going to get your 25 to 30%. And then they say, oh, sorry, it's going to be too expensive. You're going to go bust, or we're not making enough money. We have to reduce this. How are you going to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And I think, you know, we're going to have to build a team within the council that will be able to look at and have that open relationship with that developer there, that open book, so we can see where the challenges are. Because it is going to be a long-term project. We don't know how many financial cycles that's going to go through. But absolutely, the intent is to maximise the amount of affordable housing that we can have in this town centre, while still making it viable to actually regenerate. Because if it isn't viable, because we say, you know, 100% affordable housing and no developer steps forward, 100% affordable, 100% of nothing is nothing. You know, we're not going to get the housing that we need. And I think the government have recognised, particularly in London, around the mechanisms that we've seen around the affordable housing rate around properties, is that developers aren't building at the speed that we would like. The housing aren't coming on board as quickly as we'd like. So the government has temporarily moved it down to 20% for certain schemes within London to really rocket and turbocharge some of those redevelopment opportunities here. And you know, we've seen in Mitcham at Mitcham Gasworks, right? It was 100% private development. The developers said it wasn't viable. They weren't able to provide affordable housing. So what did we do as a council? We stepped in. So working with the Mayor of London, we're now buying those properties and we're going to turn them into affordable housing. We're not doing all of them, but we're doing a portion of those. So, you know, we do have powers, obviously, with the planning authority, but we're also the political authority here. And we will be pushing hard because there are values as an administration around increasing the provision of affordable housing. So I can't give you an exact figure in terms of what it will be like. And that will be part of what the developers come back with. You know, some of them may go at a certain level and say you can have this for that or this for that, and we'll have to have that honest conversation with the developers and obviously present that then to residents.
Thank you. I can just take, well, I've got a lot of hands up. I can just take one more because we won't get in all the other questions. So if I could just take that question there very quickly, if that's all right, because I can, if you press the button on your panel, that's it. And then move the microphone. Yeah, you got it.
Hello. My name is Richard Castle. I'm head of legal of Lim Miliband, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I've recently moved into the Wimbledon area, and it seems that this problem with affordable housing, I may have a solution in order to resolve it. So in terms of like budget allocation, I have a finance model where I'm able to finance housing purchases based on pension funds. A lot of pension funds nowadays, the money is in savings and it's redundant, but it can be actually like withdrawn based on a government scheme called the lump sum allowance. And if there is a population of pensioners here in Merton, I would be able to sort of access those funds in order to invest them into property. So that's something that I would want to propose to the council. I'm just wondering how I would maybe have a meeting with development person in the housing department to propose this housing investment or housing finance model that I could provide.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I pass that back to you, Ross, for a very quick answer, if that's all right?
Yeah, if you see some of our colleagues, Sarah or Keir, just over to the right, they can take your details and put you in touch with the right person at the council.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you properly. I beg your pardon.
Hello?
No, not there yet.
I was just saying, it would be really nice if you let a woman speak. I love men, I love my dad, but I'm just saying, so far, it's just been men and it's not fair. It would be nice just to mix it up. Secondly, some of us are disabled, so I'd really like not to be put on a timer. I'm already anxious just looking at you, bless you, staring at your mobile phone, but I'm like, oh, okay, thank you.
Really good point. Of course, we want absolutely the full diversity of our audience here this evening to speak their minds and to put their questions. And I'm very pleased to say that the next questioner, I believe, is a lady. So I'm going to move us on to the question from, I think it's Nana Opoku Aduse, if she's here. If not, I think I'm reading the question out on her behalf. And I'm going to ask, what is the council doing to solve the problem of temporary accommodation, higher rent and service charges fees? And this is over to the leader again, I'm afraid, but here we go. This is Ross.
Thank you. So there's a lot to unpack in that question. And I think, first of all, to recognise that there are families living in temporary accommodation. Temporary accommodation is a place, emergency accommodation for residents that have been evicted and you know, Merton has around 752 households in temporary accommodation. It is one of the lowest number, but for each of those families, that's not a comfort to them, and it's really difficult. And what we've seen, it's either through rent increases, it's through family breakdowns, but the most common theme of why people are made homeless is through no-fault eviction. So that's when the landlord wants their property back, whether they're going to re-rent it out or do something else with it. But it's not for any reason other than a no-fault eviction, as in the tenant hasn't misbehaved. And the government, through its reforms, through its Renters' Rights Bill, is now getting rid of the no-fault evictions in the coming months. So the most common form of evictions is now going to be removed, and it's going to give more rights to renters and erase that eviction practice. So to help those families stay in rented accommodation for longer and to live happier lives. Now, we're in competition in terms of finding temporary accommodation with other councils. London Council spend, I think it's about £5 million a day, £5 million a day on temporary accommodation. Huge sums of money. And so what we're doing, and this is through government financial support, we're bringing money in. We're not just always spending, you know, the Merton ratepayers' money. We're bringing money in from government. We're acquiring properties, street properties, properties from developments that can't be sold, and turning them into temporary accommodation to manage that acute need at the moment. We're working with residents and those to see if there's any other opportunities. We have a fund that helps residents that are under threat of eviction. We've got a very good housing team that will speak to those under threat of eviction to give them advice and to challenge. And of course, you know, where we are in the housing market in terms of supply, we took that bold decision to start building the first council homes in a generation, which will be council homes, which will mean that those people that are under threat of homelessness will have somewhere that we're providing in a space where we weren't before. So I think that is a really important thing. And I think many people in this room will probably see some of the practices of landlords. You know, in Merton, Criterion Capital have been issuing Section 21 notices to their tenants, private rented tenants, in the towers in Colliers Wood and in housing over in West Barnes. And of course, the council is seeking urgent clarification from the landlord as to whether these notices will be withdrawn, because that's potentially hundreds of families that could be made homeless in an instant. So where we can step in, we will. We don't have all of the answers and we can't build all of the housing that is needed, but we will. And we're improving renters' rights here in Merton through the landlord licensing scheme. And because of that, we've been one of the first councils to do a temporary management order, and that's basically to seize properties from a rogue landlord, to manage the rent, to manage the conditions of that property. So the rent that we get, we reinvest into bringing those houses and those homes up to the standard that those tenants deserve. So we're being proactive in this space, building, buying and regulating, as well as having that support from national government in terms of the Renters' Right Bill.
Thank you very much, Ross. I don't know if Nana is here. I'm sorry, I wouldn't recognise you. I do apologise, but I wonder if there's a follow-up question from anybody in the audience. The lady, sorry, the one behind you. There you go. Good.
Thank you. Thank you for your time as well tonight. I think this question connects to the previous one, and this one is, how do you follow through when government changes? Obviously, different political parties change, that the ethics of everything you're trying to achieve is followed through and there's no surprises and therefore new plans? Thank you.
I think that's a really, really, really good question, because obviously when governments are of different stripes, of different shades of ours, they have different priorities and different views as to how to achieve the outcomes that they want. But I think the track record and fundamental purpose of the council is how we manage residents' money well. So even when there was a government with two parties not of our colours, or a party on its own not of our colours, throughout that period, we still were able to put our values and our principles in play here, whether it was around retaining that council tax support when national government wanted that to be the burden of local government. And so when the council, when the government, the mayor and the council all aligned politically, there is better agreement, better alignment on what we want to achieve. And it means that we can have some of those conversations where that funding that we fight for, we can actually secure here. So the grant funding that we've got for building the 75 homes, part of it is from Merton that we're paying, part of it is from the Mayor of London. That is the same for the housing on the gasworks site as well. The temporary accommodation housing that we're acquiring is through a grant that we're match funding from central government. So when those shades align, your priorities are matched. And of course, politics is a broad church in every party, but we have a better chance of succeeding in our values when we have political parties of the same shades all aligned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. I'm doing a terrible job here. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to move on at some pace if we're going to hit our 8:30 deadline, everybody. I've got a question from Ian Haig. Ian, I'm sorry, I don't know if you're in the room, but what can be done about electric bikes on pavements? And should these bikes be controlled in some way? So I don't know if you're here, Ian, but I'm going to pass over to Eleanor for an answer to that important question.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Ian, for asking it. And it's something that affects me as a cyclist myself and someone who uses the e-bike that you can hire, as well as having my own bike. And again, as someone who walks around the borough. I'm not quite sure if the question is about kind of e-bikes. So I'll talk about those first, but then I think it might also talk about more generally people's personal electric bikes. But the e-bikes that you can hire, so Lyman Forest, if you'd asked me a year ago, are we working well with those companies and is the system working for Merton? I'd said no, it wasn't. Because if you go back a year ago, I don't remember, people were just parking them wherever they wanted, outside their own front door, which is nice and convenient for them, but not if you're in a wheelchair, or if you've got a pushchair, or if you're just, walking along and having to swerve around them and then they fall down and they cause absolute issues. And there was more and more of them coming, and we didn't want to stop residents using them because we think they're really useful, and we think it again helps keep our air pollution down. So instead we worked with the two main providers, Lime Bikes and Forest Bikes, and we said, right, okay, we've got to put a stop to this. Let's identify the spots that most people tend to most park at, and let's see if we can find convenient places where we can insist that there are specific bays where people have to park their bikes. And we started implementing that system back in June last year, and then working with TfL, who are trying to put the system in across London since then. We've put an additional, put 340 designated hire bays. So if you don't use those bikes, how it works is when you end your ride, it literally won't let you end your ride if you're not in a marked, either marked on the floor or marked on the app bay. And if you regularly try and leave a bike outside one of those areas, it finds you and it eventually does block you. We are still seeing just the occasional infringement of this because people can get past it and just to leave their bike and leave it running. If you ever see one of those, you can report it on our report it, sort it system, and it'll send it through to Lime and Forest, and they have people out and about roving and removing them. A lot of the problems that we had late last year were particularly linked to Lime bikes being hacked. There were people who were able to, particularly young people, very good at finding ways of overriding the payment system and getting into the bike. So then you're kind of you're off grid. It's kind of not a sanctioned ride. Lime worked hard. We pressured them, and they worked hard to overcome ways of being able to stop that hacking, and you've seen a huge improvement. So you aren't hearing as much of that blip 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 noise that annoyed us a lot. What we have seen in the rise in is people with their own e-bikes, which again is brilliant, but there are some safety issues. One is there's a fire risk around the charging the batteries, and people need to pay real close attention to how they charge the batteries and not leaving it out overnight. We've had some incidents linked to that, but also people riding them quite fast and sometimes on pavements and so on. That is illegal. Let's be clear, that is illegal, and nobody should be doing that. You shouldn't be riding my normal push bike on the pavement, let alone an e-bike. And we want to be doing everything we can to stop this as well. But happy to take further questions on this, and particularly to take further questions on how we make it easier for people to cycle around the borough as well.
As I say, I'm sorry, I don't know if Ian is in the room, but if Ian has a follow-up, then let's turn to Ian. I'm not sensing an Ian in the room right now. So I'm going to exercise a little bit of chair's discretion here and move us on, because I'm not seeing a flurry of hands going up. So if I may, I'd like to move us on to question 6, so halfway everybody, which is from Kiri Balassingham. And I think, Kiri, if you're here, I'm reading that question on your behalf, but correct me if my note is incorrect there. And Kiri asks, Kiri lives at Hartland Way in Morden and asks about crime, to say crime has increased in the past 2 years by carjacking. We would like our park pathway to be blocked off at the period of night to deter criminals coming into Hartland Way, which is in Morden. How do we get this done?
And I think that's a really important question. I know, as I said in the opening remarks, antisocial behaviour and crime is a concern for residents, but I'd like to provide reassurance and not to dismiss that particular incident and that incident, but we are one of the safest boroughs in London, and I just want to put that on record, because sometimes you can see things that are shared on social media and it gets shared quite quickly without context, without background and what have you, that it can provide real fear for individuals. But I'd like to provide that reassurance that we are one of the safest boroughs in London. We work very closely with the police. As I said, our Safer Streets team are out walking, patrolling, evenings, days, weekends, working with the police, sharing that intelligence, doing specific operations to try and deter criminal and anti-social behaviour. And they are seeing the results, and it is successful. And you can find out online how you can email or phone them if you've got particular incidents of antisocial behaviour that you would like to report. I think it's asbunit@merton.gov.uk for specific things, and they go out and we'll look into that. The particular location of the park in Hartland Way. So those of you that aren't familiar with the geography, we do touch part of Sutton at one part of Morden, and Hartland Way is right on the border between right on the border of Merton and Sutton, and the specific location and the park in question is actually in Sutton's boundary. But we will work with Sutton. I will take this up with them to see what we can do to alleviate that concern from Kiri, and also we will pass this information on to the Safer Streets team to see if they can do the patrols. What's really important for us, if you are reporting around antisocial behaviour issues, is if there is a pattern around time, location, to include that as well, because it then means that the patrols can be targeted around when incidents are most likely to happen. If we don't have that information, they may go in the morning and think that everything's okay, whereas the things are happening at lunchtime, for instance. So if you are reporting, please do include as much information as possible. But I will take up this specific request with Sutton Council and liaise directly with the questioner.
Thank you very much for answering that, Ross, and thank you for following that up with Sutton Council. It does sound like there's an opportunity there. Is Kiri here tonight? If she is, there's an opportunity to follow up, of course. Would you like to just press your... so everybody can hear you? It's the one nearest you, the bottom one. That's it, you're on.
Okay, thank you. The Safer Merton does work, but the incidents happening are around 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. These carjackers are specially equipped. They have all the latest technologies. They're using drones now as well within the perimeters, and yeah, it's happening throughout that area specifically. So that's the reason why I asked that question. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to give you a quick answer and then move on to question 7, but really good point there.
No, it's just, Kiri, thank you for the question. Just around some clarification around carjacking. Is it whilst people are driving and people are taking the car, or is it people are taking a parked car from parked car? Okay, all right. I'll take that up with the police and the Safer Streets team. Thank you.
Sorry, Kiri, I didn't realise that was you there. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much for some really good questioning there. This next one is from a lady called Linda Parkins. I don't know if Linda is here, but I think I'm asking your question, Linda. How do you support care leavers beyond the age of 25? And do you think there's more that could be done? For example, including increasing the exemption age of council tax, or any ongoing support there, Ross? Oh, okay, fine.
So I can hear from more women. There we go. I'm really glad that Linda's asked this question, because it's given me an opportunity to talk about something that the council spends a lot of money on, and that is absolutely vital service, but that often goes unseen by most people, because, you know, thankfully most of you won't have any interaction with the children's social care system, but it is the second biggest budget area that we spend money on. So almost a third of our budget is on our children's social care. That's second biggest after adult social care, so looking after older people. So to be clear, that's not all looking after children who have been taken away, and we try minimise that, and we do have some of the lowest levels of children in care, because we do a lot of work preventing that and supporting families who are at risk, supporting young people who are having conflict with their families, and putting in place temporary and foster arrangements and so on and so on. But this is very delicate, important, expensive, highly trained work, which Peter, as a principal of a further education college, will there are a lot about. And so when children are in our care, we are the corporate parent, and we are formally responsible. When we say in our care, they might be living in a foster home, they might be in an adopted home, they might be in a children's home. We as the council are still their kind of formal, have that formal parental duty. And we were really pleased when a few years ago now the government extended our duties to those care leavers up to first to 21 and now to 25. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't stop speaking to my parents when I was 25. When I was 18 or 21, you know, you stay part of the family, and you still need that support. Ofsted have awarded us really good and outstanding rating for the support that we provide to our care experienced young people, and we're really proud of the work that we do with them post 18. And this includes Ross talked earlier about council tax exemptions for and council tax support for those on low incomes. All children who've been in care in Merton will then not pay any council tax until they're 25. We provide a lot of education and employment support. Again, many go to colleges like Peter's. We have a special employment team called Employ Merton, which is about helping vulnerable people who might be quite far from the labour market, including a lot of care leavers, to get into work. So our statutory duty, that what we have to do, does stop at 25. But we try and act like a normal family and be flexible and nice and keep in touch beyond that. So we have, for example, a Care Leaver alumni group run by our corporate parenting team, which brings together those who have been brought up in our care and who are over the age of 25, and they can still attend that group and contribute to dinners, social events. And also quite often Care Leavers over the age of 25 stay in close contact with social workers, with the team, letting them know about big life events. And they can also come back to us for advice on specific issues, be that about immigration or legal issues. So, you know, I'd love for us to do even more, and I'd love to, if Linda was here, to hear her ideas about what we could be doing. But I'm glad I've had the chance to tell you a little bit about the work that we do, trying to keep children as safe as possible in Merton.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the question as well, Linda. If Linda's here, there's an opportunity to follow up. If not, anybody else, would you like to put a question over to our panel? No? Okay, I think it's time for question 8 in that case, which is from Ian, and I don't know if Ian's in the room. Ian, do you want to read your question, or? It's the one nearest you at the bottom. There we go.
I will read my question. And first of all, I just want to thank the councillors for tonight, and also on a job well done. It's been a pleasure to live in this borough, and I believe it's one of the best boroughs in London. So big congratulations to where we're at. We've come a long way. My question, and I've got to refresh my brain, sorry. This is what happens when you have a stroke. My question's about the priorities and impact on disabled residents within the Merton Council, particularly the key issue outside when assessments are made on service of quality and accountability. Merton Council outsource their freedom passes to a borough that's not even Merton. It's sent off to a complete different borough for assessment, and it takes 6 to 12 months to be processed. People on disabilities are vulnerable. They rely on the Freedom Pass and other services from the council that shouldn't take 6 to 12 months for processing, and then conflicting information on websites which are absolutely contradicting from what the website says to what you get told when you submit it on how the processes work. Then when you make a complaint to Merton Council, you never hear anything back, but yeah, we'll get you, and then they never get back to you. Being someone who, I'm a psychiatrist, I've worked in the field for quite a while in victim crime. I'm also the former Prime Minister's advisor for LGBT affairs in Australia, so I understand politics. What gets me is the borough spending money outside of its own borough when you could employ someone locally engaged within the borough to actually process freedom passes and blue badges and actually create an employment opportunity within our own borough. Why are we spending funds outside of borough? That was my question. And why is it taking 12 months for such a vital service? Like during rehabilitation, it was one of the biggest concerns that I was listening to from residents who were just like, have you heard anything? It's just something that's a high impact on anyone, whether it's a disability or, and just remember everybody, disabilities don't come just in physical. And that, a lot of people forget that. Disabilities come in all shapes and forms. Thank you.
Very pointed and powerful question. Thank you very much, Ian. It's over to Ross.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you for raising this important question. And I'd like to apologise that either yourself or people that you know haven't had a response in terms of complaints, and if you could direct them to my office, I'd be interested to pursue in that. And I'd like to thank you for your compliments around the borough. You can come to the next event. But now turning to serious issue, because you know blue badges, freedom passes are vital for residents that are eligible for them and need them. It's a lifeline to help them travel, to help them get parking close to the shops and facilities that they need, and we absolutely recognise that. In Merton, the Freedom Pass, Freedom Pass is set out by London councils, which is the collective of all of the councils in London, but Merton administers and pays for it locally, and we pay for 12,000 residents to use that Freedom Pass, and whilst others say it's an expensive burden, we've been very clear that we would fight any review or reform to the Freedom Pass locally because it is so important. We know that there have been delays with the Freedom Pass and Blue Badge. A lot of these were happening. I don't know when the information you have. Okay, so prior to September 2025, there were 2 staff members in Merton that were providing the processing for Freedom Pass and Blue Badges, and there were stories. My inbox was getting contact from residents that were waiting an unacceptable length of time. And so that's why we did look to how we could change that service and improve that service. I'm not ideological, I'm not dogmatic, because I don't think residents are. I don't want a service to be one way or the other just because of my political theory. I want the service that will work because that's what residents value and that's what residents want. And since we contracted out that service in September 2025, they've processed about 1,500 applications, severely cutting that backlog of applications for those services. And now typically what I'm told is that the service will turn it around in 2 days if all the information and eligibility is provided. There will be circumstances where they need further information because it is a strict criteria in order to get a Freedom Pass or a Blue Badge, and we have to ensure that it is going to the right people that need it and not other people that don't. So it's typically in 2 days. All of our accounts are audited. Where that service is failing, and I did say at the very beginning, this council isn't perfect. No council is perfect in all of their service delivery. You know, it's a relatively big borough. You know, we're not going to empty all of the bins 100% of the time to everyone's satisfaction. We're not going to deliver all of the services to 100% satisfaction, but we will strive and we will do what we can to do that. I've been told when all of the information is provided, that level of time that's been waiting has been cut down. There has been a small group of residents that have, during the transition from in-house to that provider, that there may still be a group of people that are waiting a long time, and the advice from the service is for them to resubmit the application for it to be turned around in a quick time. If you know of anyone that is still waiting for a very long time, please do get in touch with my office, either by phone or email or letter. Because we rely on the information that we're provided, both from residents and from officers, and we need to make sure that when residents raise those concerns, that we are investigating those concerns and addressing them in the way that we can.
I can see you're dying to come back in.
Sorry, just because of what I do, and so I actually did some research before I came today. I actually rang them on their phone because I wanted to make sure I had factual evidence before I spoke to you. So whoever's giving you that information is giving you a Furby. They are only currently up to November processing for Freedom Passes. Blue Badges, on the other hand, are up to date. So it's the Freedom Passes that they are only up to November processing. So there is a big contradiction between that. Because I just wanted to make sure before I came I did have factual, and I called them up, and she was very open. She said, we're only up to November. And I said, well, we're now in March, so unfortunately I'm just letting you know. Blue Badges, on the other hand, she said they are turning them around rather quickly. It's the freedom passes that are far behind, and the freedom passes is what disability people rely on because they may not be able to drive, have access to a vehicle. You know, people now have lost the use of Zip, so they are now heavily relying on the public transport. And when you've got medical appointments for rehabilitation, and because Colliers Wood doesn't fall into St George Borough for medical, we've got to go all the way out to St Heliers. It's ridiculous when I can see St George Hospital from my house. So, you know, it's and it's a cost. Yeah. Thank you.
Quick follow-up, Ross?
Yeah, no, just really helpful feedback, and we'll take that away to the service. And I just want to say also that one of the full-time members of staff that we did directly employ, we've kept on till March 2026, specifically looking at that group of people I described around that have fallen through the transition to make sure that's being hit. But Ian, if I can take your details afterwards, and I'll follow up with the service if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to move us on. It's time for us to introduce question number 9, which is from Carol Lovelock. And I think Carol is going to ask your question yourself. Do you want me to? I'll read it for you very proudly, Carol. Thank you very much for putting this one. And I hope I can pronounce the chemical term correctly here. But I'm going to ask you, why have you paid for your gardeners to spray glyphosate on our pavements when it is known to have adverse effects on insects, wildlife, pets, and even people? There are other ways to clear weeds that will not have these effects. Protecting our environment should be one of our top concerns. Eleanor.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Carol. And yes, glyphosate, I think, is how we say it. And yeah, we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about this because it's a weed killer that is still very much allowed to be used in the UK and is used by most of the councils. It does have some negative impacts on biodiversity, and we are actively looking to move away from it. The kind of summary answer is, at the moment, there isn't a good enough alternative. So what we're doing is we're trying to, when we use it on our streets, it's used as part of our kind of maintenance of our removing weeds on streets. It's not kind of sprayed willy-nilly all the time. We do it under kind of programmatized ways, targeting the weeds in, you know, the channels and the pavements. And we do then top that up with kind of hand removal and stuff when needed as well. But doing the alternatives like manual hand removal alone is unbelievably labour intensive, as anyone who's got a small garden can tell you, trying to remove weeds. I've got a tiny one and I can't keep on top of mine. Other boroughs have tried foam alternatives, and I think Hammersmith and Fulham tried that. That wasn't effective and actually led to damaged pavements, damaged highways. We ourselves in Merton tried a biological alternative, and that was 70% more expensive and required more repeat treatment, so was much less effective. So at the moment, all the alternatives that we're seeing are more expensive, both more expensive and less effective. And we know that people do want to see weeds removed from our streets. So what we are trying to do is move towards reducing the application and find other ways of not needing weed removal. So, for example, in our parks and on our grass verges, we have only very kind of targeted use of glyphosate, and we've put as many of our grass verges as we can. I think 20% now are official wild ways where we leave them to grow wild plants and wild meadows. And in our parks, we're about to, later this year, we'll be moving to a new contractor looking after our parks and green spaces, Glendale. And we've explicitly put in that contract that they will move towards removing the use of glyphosate completely over the life of that contract. So, I mean, I'd love if there was an easy answer. And Carol, I'd love your ideas on this. We're working with other London councils to try and find better alternatives. And we are trying to minimise the use because, yeah, we care very deeply about our local biodiversity in our environment.
I think Carol's following up here.
I think I am. The weeds don't cause the cracks in the pavements. That's the reason we're given why you're doing the spraying. The cracks are in the pavements and the weeds grow. And in other circumstances, some of those weeds are called wildflowers. I belong to the Greener Street Initiative. My wall, which is right next to the pavement, has flowers in the wall, down the side of the wall and on the edge of the pavement. So I weed my bit of the pavement. I then have a flower bed at the side of the pavement. Again, that is going to be sprayed. Your tractors or whatever they are that go out to do the spraying, we have a picture that was supplied to us that shows them doing the spraying. The spray is all around. It is known to have connections to cancer. They did have concerns it was connected to Parkinson's. We have personal information for people whose dogs have been ill after it. That doesn't include the foxes, the frogs. We had loads of bees in our back garden. Then you sprayed with glyphosate. The bees disappeared for weeks, eventually came back. But that is the effect it's having. Over 30 countries do not use it for that reason. They have limited use. You mentioned the National Trust. I am a volunteer as a gardener in the National Trust. They never use it because it is a poison and it is poisoning things. The only time they use it is to inject it into Japanese knotweed. They would never use it in the park. And if I'd had time, I would have shown you the photos. There are photos of where they've sprayed it, and it's sprayed along the side of where there's a playground. It's killed the grass that's alongside the path, though why, I don't know. But the grass on the inside of the playground is also dead. So there isn't really any kind of limit on where it goes. You know, it's not just the wildlife, it's people's pets, it's the elderly if they're sitting there and they pick something up off the ground. Even if you bend over, if your dog does a poo and you pick up the poo, if they've just sprayed it, you're getting that stuff on your hand, inside the bag maybe, but there's no guarantee. We should not be using it. You're going to use it 3 times this year. That is terrible. Even if, I mean, you gave us the opportunity that we could organise our road to take the weeds out. We had about 15 days, maybe slightly over, to ask all our neighbours, would they agree? Lots of them probably wouldn't because they don't want to weed the pavements. You know, I've got over 100 houses down my road. I look after 10 flower beds that are in the grass verges to make it look better. And I've always kept my front garden looking nice. But, you know, you're meant to be pro the environment. We should do it some other way.
Thank you ever so much. It's a really passionate bit of input there. And again, I think we've learned a lot about that. Shall I give Eleanor a chance to just come back to you on that, if that's okay? And then we'll close that question, I'm afraid, but there may be some further follow-up after.
Thank you. I'll try and keep brief. Yeah, we are really grateful to those who volunteer to look after our streets and our parks and our green spaces. And the Merton Garden Street Scheme is a great scheme. And I know there has been some miscommunication in the past about streets that shouldn't be sprayed because there are weeds there, and they've been working to iron that out. So hopefully this season that won't be happening. As I said, look, we would love to stop using it too, but we need an alternative that isn't going to break the bank and take money away from the other vital services that we've been talking about, you know, the homeless families, the children's social care and everything else that we have to do. But we are actively working towards trying to find other routes, and yeah, very happy to continue to talk to you about this, Carol. Thank you.
I am going to move. So I'm so sorry. I can see a forest of hands going up. I'm getting a 5-minute call from over there, which means we've got time for just one last question, everybody, which comes this evening from Sean Nunes, I think. Hi, Sean, and you're reading, I think.
Good evening. Good evening, councillors and all. My name's Sean. So with regard to this regeneration of Central Morden, I'm finding at the moment being a resident chair, and specifically because I've got a van, but it'll affect other people with larger family cars, and that is parking. So on the basis of that, and also on the fact that we're trying to attract people into this borough, and specifically the Morden Centre going forward, in order to attract families and people to Morden Centre, parking will be important. My question is, what is being done to repurpose the unused rooftop parking behind Sainsbury's?
So Peel House car park, for those that don't know, which is in between Sainsbury's and that little structure, it's a much loved car park actually. And when I was became leader in May 22, the whole structure was closed because of the health and safety around the top level. The concrete structure there had some concerns that we've been monitoring, but it was closed, and residents did want it reopened and did want to use it, which is why we pushed really hard to get at least that lower level open. But I think, you know, there is still the cost that will be involved to fix that top structure is prohibitive. And although the space below is well used, there are many different car parks within the town centre. I think there's over 1,000 car parking spaces immediately in the town centre. I think more than most town centres that you have. So you've got Kenley Road car park, you've got York Road car park, which is just the other side, and 60% of those car parking spaces are operated by the council. You've also got the National Trust's car park. Although it's behind a fence, there's still a car park there. You've got Iceland and Lidl as well, and the private car park just behind Peel House. So the reason there is a lot of parking space here, the provision is there. Not many people use York Road car park, particularly on weekends. I think because it's quite a competitive offer in terms of Peel House. I think it's 60p for an hour in Peel House car park, and it's £1.30 at York Road. And maybe we need to do something better around how we signpost the different parking spaces that are available in the town centre, because, you know, like I said at the beginning, everything that we do is a trade-off around that value for money aspect. We're very key that we are delivering value for money for our residents, and if there is something that is going to be really expensive to justify investing in, reopening, etc., for the return, then unfortunately sometimes we are going to have to say no, we're not going to do that. But I think it's a very valid point, and one around what can we do more to signpost those car parks, particularly at weekends, for residents that want to use them.
Sean, you're coming back.
No, that's good. Thank you very much. And I think your initiative here, by the way, is great.
The lady over there. There you go.
Hello, thank you. Just following up about, you've mentioned tonight several times about residents and going on the parking, by the way. I myself got a ticket, but I'm glad you mentioned that you're going to do more work on getting up signs and making it clearer. Tonight, I'm Yasmin, by the way, founder of Merton Pop. I've heard you say, I think, when we talked about Morden Town, even the parking residents, you're here to listen. I myself have been saying what we need is residents associations. So whether it's the parking or anything else, we would like to see residents associations. And I'm also, Merton Pop is borough-wide. I've been to you, Miss Stringer. I've been to you, Mr. Ross, talking about the need. I've been to my 3 councillors because I've just found out from this lovely lady about the whole weeding. What can you do to help us? Because I've been waiting 1.5 years to set up my own residents association for St Helier, and I tack it on to parking and everything else because we want a closer relationship. Heck, we want to even find out about the good things. And if I look around tonight, there's only about, 22 people in the room? That's no reflection on you. But if we're going to get the difficult task of joining up hands together, how are you meeting the residents? How are you listening to residents? If, for example, in my area, which is attached to Morden High Street, there is no residents association, and are you finally going to come to one of our borough-wide meeting? Because if you say you want to listen to residents, please help us. So I'd love to hear that, and I'll just end on that, and thank you very much.
Great closing point, but it is the closing point. So thank you very much indeed for asking that one. I'm going to give that one to Ross.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yasmin. And I know that we've met on a number, was it just once? And you are very passionate around setting up residents associations. And, you know, we are all about how we can help that engagement process. You know, we've got a community engagement team now that is trying to reach out as a council. So we're not just seen in this monolith big building here, but how we can get closer to residents and sharing that information. On the point around community engagement, we're always happy to attend meetings when invited, particularly resident-led meetings. We don't want to impose ourselves and just turn up, although if you welcome that, please let us know. You know, this weekend I'll be at a residents' coffee morning. I'll be going to the Big Iftar, and you know, we're regularly going out and meeting residents. So please do get in touch if you want us to come to your residents' meetings. As a council ourselves, we've got community forums in the different town centres that residents can come to, can feed back to. We're doing events like this. This isn't something that the council's always done. This is a new initiative. We've had 3. I like them. You know, dependent on what happens in May, I would love to keep this going. We've extended public questions at the council, the time allowed for residents to ask meetings, you know, on things that I put out. I put out my email, I put out my phone number for residents to get in touch. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible, as possibly as physically as possible. In terms of the specific around residents associations, normally when residents associations are set up, they're resident led. So it's not the council coming in, putting our size 10 boots in and saying, you must set this up or you must do this, because the sustainability of a residents association, the critical is that engagement, that it's led by residents and it can continue and find venues, etc., etc. So I know that you've been looking to set up your residents association, and maybe we could put you in touch with other residents associations for you to, you know, their terms of reference or etc., etc., if that would be helpful for you to share that good practice in the same way we do with our Friends of Parks groups.
Very quick last point, if that's okay.
I'd like to just make one question. I've met you a year ago. I don't know if you remember me, Rains Park Library, yeah, about Mosslin Gardens, Martin Grove, yeah, about the island. I've sit here and listened to everybody's complaints, and they're all most of them are for the future. I've lived in this borough 47 years, and I've lived in Martin Grove for all that time, and it's got disgusting. I told you about the island. I've spoken to a gentleman on your borough, couldn't do nothing. All he offered me was earth to fill the gaps. I've got pictures here. I showed you the ones what were done over a year ago. I've got pictures here what were done now, where lorries are just going over the middle of it. We've got daffodils put in, not by the council or by the Muslim ladies, by our own street. Half of them are gone. You should see these pictures. And you're talking about making Morden a nice place to live. Well, Martin Grove must be one of the dirtiest places in this borough. I would like you, and I say this in front of everyone, personally, to come and have a look at our island and do something about it, please, because it is in a terrible state. And it's only a little road. It's a cul-de-sac. And as I told you before, we had a lovely tree in the middle of the island, woke up one Saturday morning and the council decided to cut it down. Why? When you're putting the 1,000 trees up, you cut our little tree down. You told me that it would be replaced. The gentleman I spoke to afterwards said it would be done in October, November. We're still waiting. We don't want a tree now. We'd like a little bush or something and some nice flowers. We would like the council, you're spending a lot of money, thousands of pounds on everyone else. We'd like just a few bob to help us towards our island. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the last, and it really will be the last question, everybody. Very quick last comment. I'm sorry, we haven't got any more time. Final words.
So really reasonable requests, and I'm sorry that we've not spoken in between that period, because it was some time ago when we first met around your dissatisfaction, but I'll be happy to come along with officers to the island in Martin Grove and see what we can do with that. So I'll take your details again. I can't remember your name off the top of my head, but and then we'll get in touch and arrange a date. It needs to be before end of March, because that's when the pre-election period kicks in, and I can't do any council activity then. So we'll come down before that period.
So there we go. I hope you feel you've worked your panel hard this evening, dear audience members, and we're delighted to have done this. See you again at the next one. And I'm sorry we haven't got time. I'm really sorry we haven't got time for your question, but you may be able to follow it up by way of casework later on. So thank you, everybody, and a very good night. A little bit of networking